We are on section number 134 this evening, Jesus returns to Bethany, and 135, the cursing of the fig tree, the cursing of the fig tree. And there's only one question for 134, but it helps us to establish a time frame. So question number 740, concerning Jesus returning to Bethany. And so this is going to be Sunday night. Out there. Okay. Sunday night. The last few things have been dealing with Christ during the triumphal entry and what was going on that day. And a lot of people, they're familiar somewhat with the time frame of Christ's activities. You have the triumphal entry, and then you have the next several days that he will be spending teaching. And I think one of the things that people don't think about is, well, we know that he was crucified. We know that he was crucified on Wednesday, and then there are those that think that it's on Friday, of course. And the question really is, what goes on in between all that time there? And especially when you look at the activities, as you go through the harmony of the Gospels in this section, what happens is you realize that there are not enough activities to fill up 5 days worth, and you really only have a few days that are covered. And so question number 134, Jesus returning to Bethany, is just like, even though it's one question, the special significance of it is that it helps establish the time frame for Christ's week of Passion. Okay, so this is Sunday night now, and the question is on number 740, what did Jesus do before going back to Bethany on Sunday night? So what did he do? This is going to be based on Mark 11:11, where it says, "And Jesus entered into Jerusalem and into the temple, and when he had looked around about upon all the things, and now the eventide was come, he went out unto Bethany with the 12." So the answer real easy is, it is A, he went to observe what was happening in the temple. Okay, so the other question, the other answers here. Let's look at C. He blessed the temple. Well, offering a blessing is something spiritually we sort of do in a sociable kind of way. Now, especially considering that he had just bemoaned the fate of the temple, and he's going to talk about how it's going to be destroyed, going to offer a blessing just really wouldn't be the kind of thing that you would be compatible with the judgment that he was saying was coming their way. But offering a blessing is a sociable kind of thing to do. Christ was there on a matter of business, and he was not just being sociable. It is spiritually polite to bless someone by doing something like giving thanks to God for a meal, or maybe praying for someone who has just shared their troubles with you. You should offer a time of prayer, okay? Or maybe giving a prayer at a prayer of invocation at an event. That's a polite, sociable thing to do, and so that would have fit normally into the situation, and it's the ordinary thing to do with day-to-day events, but this occasion was no ordinary event. So if you were to have been assigned this question, you would have said, well, why wouldn't this fit? Okay, why wouldn't this fit? Why would blessing the temple not seem to be appropriate? So you're looking for things not so much that are said in the scriptures, but things that are missing, or things that would be odd, might fit somewhere else, but not in this time. Okay, so B, he thanked everyone for making him king. Okay, thanking everyone for making him king might be a happily ever after kind of ending that you would get in a holiday movie. Okay, if Holiday were writing the story here, Jesus would come in, triumphal entry, everybody's thrilled, everybody's excited. The last thing you would expect is everybody to turn on him. Okay, so he was not really thanking them, and also because he knew what was about to happen, he knew that this was not the done deal. He knew that he was presenting himself as king, but it's something that he knew was not really going to end up happening. Real life is not a holiday movie. Real life is a cosmic drama that doesn't tie up so neatly like a movie. The cross and the resurrection are going to be the climax of world history, and the end is going to be sewn up not so neatly. However, the end is going to be sewn up perfectly to God's glory in the ultimate end. Okay, so thanking him for making king would have fit somewhere else, not in this setting here. So for A, Mark continues the narrative showing the timeline for the Passion Week. He marks the end of Sunday and the triumphal entry and the preparation for what comes next, the cleansing of the temple. That's coming up in the next day. And something you should know, I'll say it now, probably I'll say it when we get to the cleansing of the temple. There were 2 cleansings of the temple, and this is one of those things why you need to always think twice about all your study materials. Study materials are great, but remember that they're made up of men, and sometimes somebody might get something wrong. One of the mistakes people make about the cleansing of the temple is they assume that there's only one, and it sort of screws up the whole timetable of everything that's going on. So there's going to be actually 2 cleansings, one that he began his ministry with, and the other for the end. And so here he's getting ready to go hang out in Bethany, where Mary and Martha live and everything, and Lazarus, and he's going to be checking out the temple and sort of eyeing it up, and he'll be back the next day. Okay, so that's section 134, Jesus returns to Bethany. Now comes section 135, the cursing of the fig tree, cursing the fig tree. Now the fig tree is an important figure because the fig tree was associated by Jewish leaders as a representation of Israel. Okay, so Israel was represented figuratively by the fig tree, and we see a couple of places where this is significant. It's going to be on the Olivet Discourse in a little while when we get to that in Matthew chapter 24. So you have that, and so when you know that the fig tree represents Israel, then you can get the gist of what's going on in this section here. Now you have a note in your book there that says, number one, this is going to be on Monday. This is the next morning. The entire account of the fig tree and finding it withered both happened after the cleansing of the temple. Okay, so Matthew 21, 12, 16, the cleansing of the temple. Matthew 21, 18, 22, the cursing and withering of the fig tree. Matthew records that the disciples marveled at how soon the fig tree withered, indicating that a short time had passed since the cursing. Matthew merely puts both parts of the cursing in one place rather than the chronological order of events that Mark recorded. So you're going to find a split up. So Matthew treats it all as one thing. What happens is you see Christ, he curses the fig tree, and then the withering of the fig tree actually takes place later. Matthew just combines them together as one description. But in reality, it is split up. It's split up. Okay, so even though it was not the high season for having figs, what suggested that the tree might have had fruit on it? And this is a little bit harder to figure out, but let's see, what did anybody get for that? This is based on Mark 11:13, seeing a fig tree afar off having leaves. He came, if haply he might find anything thereon, and when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. So the answer to that, yes, go ahead.
A lot of times the figs are hidden by the leaves. I had a fig tree in the backyard, so I know. And sometimes the figs come right at the base of the leaf.
Okay. So
if there were leaves, there could have been some early figs too.
Exactly, yes. Early figs were possible. The figs form first, and then the leaves. So if you see the leaves, then you should expect that there might be some figs on it. Even though it really wasn't time of ripe figs yet, nevertheless, this tree growing certainly had that as a possibility. Okay, so Pentecost, and the words and works of Jesus Christ, I think that's the name of the book, section number 140, he has this to say. He talks about how fig trees especially were planted by the roadside because the dust was thought to facilitate their growth. and their refreshing fruit was common property. At a distance in front of him, Jesus caught sight of a solitary fig tree, and although the ordinary season at which figs ripened had not yet arrived, yet as it was clad with verdure, that's the word he uses, or greenery, and so the fruit of a fig sets before the leaves unfold, this tree looked more than usually promising. Its rich, large leaves seemed to show that it was fruitful, and their unusually early growth that it was not only fruitful, but precociously vigorous. Precociously means sort of before its time. Okay. There were every chance, therefore, of finding upon it either the late violet-colored kermooses or autumn figs that often remained hanging on the trees all through the winter and even until the new spring leaves had come, or the delicious baccaroth, the first ripe on the fig tree, of which Orientals are particularly fond. The difficulty raised about St. Mark's expression that the time of figs was not yet is wholly needless. On the plains of Gennesareth, Jesus must have been accustomed, if we may trust Josephus, to see the figs hanging ripe on trees every month in the year, excepting January and February, and there is to this day in Palestine a kind of white or early fig which ripens in spring, and much before the ordinary or black fig. On many grounds, therefore, Jesus might well have expected to find a few figs to satisfy the cravings of hunger on this fair, promising leafy tree, although the ordinary fig season had not yet arrived. Okay, so we come to question 742. As a type of Israel, okay, if the fig tree is a type of Israel, what did the abundance of leaves with no fruit suggest? And we're going to use the same scripture passage again, seeing a fig tree afar off having leaves. He came, if haply he might find anything thereon. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. The answer that we got is B. Okay, B. It is B. Israel had the appearance of spiritual maturity and should have had spiritual fruit. So if Israel is the type of the fig tree is the type of Israel, then he's actually making a commentary here. This is a very ripe moment for him to be able to make a commentary about Israel. Okay, so look at C. If Israel were given more time, it would certainly become more fruitful. No, Jesus is cutting it off. He's cutting off the time there. No more fruit on you forever is what's going to happen when he gets to that point. So let me see. So C, if the leaves had already formed and there was no fruit, then its fruit-bearing time had already passed, and having more time would not be an improvement. Israel's time had run out. Okay, for A, that at least the old fruit from the previous season showed that Israel had at least some kind of spiritual power left. Well, yeah, if there had been fruit, but there wasn't any, right? Okay, so the destitute nature of Israel is depicted in that not only was there no new fruit coming, but there wasn't anything left even of its old glory. And this should be a warning to us today of how that any residual effect of past revivals could end up disappearing. We should be careful to not assume anything of the past, but be careful to cultivate for continued blessings of revival. When we look at what we have here in America, okay, we sort of have a Christian nation. A lot of people will say, well, it's not really a Christian nation any longer. I say it is. There's a Christian character to it. There's a whole lot that's, I think we could throw in that way. But I will say this, that people's sense of morality is really a residue of the morality that comes from, I think, a greater time in America, a greater spiritual time in America. And now we're seeing unchurched people growing, numbers of unchurched people growing, and people not attending to their kids' spirituality, and just a big mess out there. When this always goes to, I'm not going to cover it tonight, but this always goes to the question of where do people get their sense of morality? What do they base the morality on? And if you do not base it on God, you do not have any possibility of morality. Morality absolutely requires religion and God. Absolutely does. You don't have it, you do not have morality. And so what morality we have is people really just taking advantage of each other's, what conscience they have and what moral behavioral code is left in America to just keep themselves going. And we're watching that being eroded all the time. Out in our major cities, they are dealing with just rising crime and casting off old values of holding people accountable and being subject to arrest. And think just yesterday, I think it was, the newly elected DA of New York City came out and said that they were no longer going to arrest people even for armed robbery. Nancy pointed out, I thought this was an interesting thing, that what about the same people screaming about gun control? Certainly, if you got armed robbery, you could at least get them on having an illegal gun or using a gun the wrong way. So with this breakdown of morality, we're going to watch this happening. So don't count on the residue of a leftover morality based on Christianity. We need to be careful to keep pressing and cultivating and nurturing as much as we can. Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, lawlessness is foretold in the scriptures as characteristic of the end times, and there are so many things they're not even going to prosecute for now, including trespassing, resisting arrest for an officer. If you're not going to put somebody in jail for armed robbery, what are all the bad guys going to do?
Yeah.
Are they going to sit home, or are they going to say, "Here's my chance"? And if the progressives really think that trespassing is not a problem, then why don't they free all the people that were arrested last year on January 6th?
Right, exactly. Right, because they've not been charged with insurrection. Okay. Funny thing happened on the way to the insurrection. Nobody brought their weapons, and nobody trespassed, and nobody. Okay, what's going on here? Okay. So yeah, we're watching this happening. Okay, so for B, Israel had endured especially since the return from the Babylonian captivity. Remember, in the Babylonian captivity, they had learned a big set of lessons to have that happen to them. They had all the trappings of people who had studied, yet they were spiritually empty. All through the ages of church history, we can see how church movements and denominations were always organizing and getting more powerful, only to become political or corporate machines which promise productivity but are spiritually empty. And so we need to take the same precautions. Okay, question 743. What did Jesus' condemnation of the tree suggest? And this is based on verse 14. And Jesus answered and said unto it, No man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever. And his disciples heard it. So the answer we got is? C. It is C, that the generation of Israel who was rejecting him would be judged and set aside. Okay, if you look at B, that the nation of Israel was going to cease to exist and the prophecies of its restoration were now null and void, can't be B. Number one, because the prophecies concerning Israel are not null and void. Those are still going to be going on. Okay, and Israel was not going to cease to exist. It's going to exist, but just without any power until it is going to be, as Ezekiel talked about it, a field of dry bones are going to be raised up. From whence we get the song, them, them, dry bones. How many people refer to that? Anybody? Got a couple people? Okay, very good. I'm not alone. Okay, so now look that up. Google that so you can hear how that song goes. Okay, so B, even though Israel was finished as far as its work of the kingdom was concerned, that does not mean they were no longer God's chosen nation. And they still have a place in prophecy. Okay, for A, that Israel should be pitied and that no one should be judged. Well, that's the way the world goes to do things, right? Okay, the world should just pity them. Being non-judgmental is a modern phenomena. Okay, life is going to judge us even if we don't want to acknowledge that there are consequences to sin. Okay, everybody would just like to look at Israel today, if anything. except for the fact that Satan sort of still got this power thing going on, and Israel's still, in jeopardy of everything. But if it was anybody else, people say, "Oh, don't judge Israel. It's all okay. No, we shouldn't judge them." No, there's judgment that comes. Okay, and then we have C, that the generation of Israel who was rejecting would be judged and set aside. Israel was merely going to be sidelined at this time. Just going to be sidelined, that's all. Okay, let me ask if there's any other insights anyone would like to share, any thoughts, any questions? Brother Joe in the back, yes. They're both in the back. They're both Joes in the back. The one I'm looking at who's raised his hand.
That one. I think just going back to what we were talking about just a bit earlier, it only takes one generation, say, even for, the Bible speaks how things can happen only in one generation, but we've seen that exemplified in good, well, at one time, good, solid, fundamental Bible preaching churches.
Oh, yeah.
It just takes one pastor from the change of leadership from one pastor to another to just, set the church off in a completely different direction than what it was known historically for.
Yeah, that's an important application. I'm talking about the nation in general, but yeah, it's astounding. It's you just can't even figure it. I'm thinking right now of Tennessee Temple University in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that was founded by Lee Roberson. I can't remember the name of the church that he had, but anyhow, Tennessee Temple, thousands of students and many missionaries, many preachers going out from that school, and it's like within our lifetime, it's gone. It's just flat out gone. The church, I think, sold its property and moved to another section. The church is just much smaller than it used to be when they were in their heyday. How did it happen so quickly? The school that Nancy and I went to, it wasn't too many years after that they slipped in their standards, and we got to where we couldn't be supporting them any longer. This happens regularly. One generation, less than a generation, it can happen in. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it took longer than a generation, but I'm reminded of Charles Spurgeon's church. I think it's Metropolitan Tabernacle in, I guess, was that in London?
Yes.
And the church used to fit, or he would preach to literally thousands of people every Sunday because they would have more than one service, and I think they could fit 5,000 people in each of the services. Now, from what I understand, the few people that still go to church there, they meet in the foyer because there just aren't enough of them to, justify firing up the whole building for the small handful of people that come.
Wow. That is, yeah. Okay.
Pastor?
Yes.
I think there's several more. One that I know of, just for over the years following college football, when I was a youngster, TCU was not only referred to as TCU, it originally was Texas Christian University. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been called that since I was a kid.
Wow, yeah. Yeah. And in the same sense, places like Harvard and what else? Princeton, Yale.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they were founded especially for ministry, and totally the opposite today.